I'm Colin Cowherd, joined as always by J-Mac. Mark Schlereth played in 3 of these games and never lost. In fact, your rule was...
Yeah, I don't go if we're going to lose.
That's right.
Right, I don't show up. Like, if I'm going, we're going to win these damn things.
So let's go to your first Super Bowl for Philadelphia, coach, quarterback, several others, first Super Bowl. Let's go to your first. Nerves, anxiety play a part early.
And, hey, listen, I'm an offensive lineman. Nothing good can happen to you when you play offensive line, right? You can whip somebody's butt. 60 plays in a row, 64 plays in a row. You give up 1 sack, you're a GOAT. That guy goes to the Pro Bowl, right? So nothing good can happen to you. So my nerves were always huge. I will tell you this. In 3 Super Bowls, I was a favorite in 2 of them, like 8.5 point favorites. That to me was like, oh, Lord, man, that's pressure. You get done playing that game, and you really felt, for me, I felt more relief than I felt anything else. Super Bowl 32 against the Green Bay Packers, we were 11.5 point underdogs. That was euphoric. Like, winning that game for me was euphoric. So there is something to playing on house money. There is something to having less pressure. And if I looked at this game just from the surface, 10,000-foot view, who has more pressure on them as a football team? Mahomes, potential dynasty. Well, are you going to be 1-2 or 2-1 in Super Bowls? You mentioned it earlier in the show. You haven't played great in Super Bowls of 8 quarters. 7 of them haven't been great. Like, who's got more pressure on them? And to me, that's the Kansas City Chiefs without question.
In my life, if it's physical or even doing a show, what exhausts me is a more pressurized show, right?
Sure.
So when you play in a Super Bowl, halftime's longer, more anxiety, facing a better team. This is where I give Philadelphia an edge. They're a deeper team. And anxiety, what makes cowards of us all, I think they say something like that.
Right.
That's why I butchered it. The point being is at the end of your Super Bowls, this was not a regular season game, did you find everything, Mark? It's a global event now. The pressure,
sure.
Halftimes, the media. Were you exhausted by game's end?
No, not really. I think when you manage yourself well and you prepare for this game the way you prepare for it, like when you are, I always say this, just because you play a pro sport doesn't make you a professional. When you're a professional and you prepare for this game and you're ready to play it, once the ball's kicked off, never one time did I think about, they said we were no good or that. You don't think about that. You think about executing your responsibility play after play after play. And the extra time at halftime, I didn't even notice it. Somebody asked me, like, Mike Shanahan, they said, Super Bowl 32, he gave the greatest speech ever. I was in your locker room. Do you remember how? And I go, I wasn't even listening. I didn't listen to what he said. Like, I was in my zone preparing myself to play well for my team so that I didn't let us down.
What's interesting is I think the Chiefs' O-line's a tad underrated. I think they have maybe the best guard in the sport and maybe the second best center or first best center. And they're more than capable at left tackle. Is that you protected in 2 of your Super Bowls John Elway.
Mm-hmm.
So this Chiefs offensive line is creating, like Elway, strong arm, adapter, mobile. When you got into these big games with Elway, did you feel you were part of a legacy now?
Yeah.
Right. When you're playing with a guy behind you, does it change kind of the specter of it for an offensive lineman? Because I keep hearing about Philly's great D line, and I think those O linemen understand that this is the greatest quarterback in the world. Not that it's added pressure, but it's almost an added responsibility to hold up your end. Did you ever feel that with Elway?
Yeah, obviously you feel that with Elway. You feel that with the great ones, but you feel that with anybody. I felt that way with Rippon. Like, I don't ever want to get my quarterback hit. The one thing about Elway is when things did break down, we used to say, hey, man, all you got to do is wash a guy. That's it. Just
now, what does that mean?
Just get him by. Just give him a nudge. Get him by that quarterback because that quarterback can make a play. So it's not the first play that's hard to defend against the Kansas City Chiefs. It's the second play. It's when you've defended the first play and then all of a sudden Mahomes takes off and goes off schedule, makes a play down the football field. It is so frustrating. Now, here's the reason, and a lot of people will look at it like, well, the Philadelphia Eagles have the best pass rush. They've got the most sacks, this, that, and the other. But, they haven't faced Mahomes, and this offensive line is pretty good. The issue that you get into if you're Philadelphia, like most teams are big and strong or fast and athletic. Offensively, I've never seen their equal from a standpoint of big, strong, fast, and athletic. So they can thunder punch you in the throat, drive it down the middle of the football field. Now they can pin and pull and capture the edge with their guards, their tackle, or their center. And he can get out there on the edge and basically get the perimeter of the defense encircled, and he can go one-on-one with the safety and is athletically gifted enough to do that. And now you add the quarterback element. And, you talked about Chris Jones earlier in the program, and he's a great player, a great player. But one of the things you do to great players, and I talked to Nick Sirianni about this, he said, listen, when you have one of those guys, we used to call them war daddies, the Warren Sapps of the world, like when you get a war daddy, oftentimes everybody tries to double team them. Here's what's unique about the Philadelphia Eagles. When you get a war daddy like Chris Jones, you know what you do? You don't block him. You read him. So what does that mean? All of a sudden, nobody blocks him. He's standing there, and that ball flags out, and that quarterback is looking right at him, right? And he's putting the belly of the running back. And if that guy pinches down, bam, he keeps it. If that guy feathers out, boom, he gives it to the running back. If that guy feathers down or pinches down and the linebacker scrapes down, he pops it over the top on a lookie to the tight end. It's one of those things, if you go back and watch the NFC Championship, watch Nick Bosa become a non-participant when they didn't even block him. Nobody was on him. They basically said, we're just going to read him. And it's a unique aspect to this game that you rarely ever have to defend as a defensive player. And that's going to be interesting for me to watch.
One of the things, if you were a Philadelphia Eagles fan, you would hear Nick Wright or my opening rant, and you'd say, boy, this show's really, really pro-Kansas City. Mm-hmm. But there are things about Philadelphia I like a lot. Many of their star players have been doubted.
Sure.
Brandon Graham, by the way, early was considered a bust. Nick Sirianni's opening press conference, he acknowledges, embarrassing. Jalen Hurts transfers from Alabama. Philadelphia has something that's very rare. A great team and great players, but many were overlooked, cast aside, considered busts. So when you get a great team and they view themselves as underdogs.
Sure.
And I kind of feel like Philadelphia feels like Mahomes and Reed, these are the TV endorsement stars. When you went in as an underdog, did you hear the media? Did you hear the narratives?
Dude, that's all you heard was biggest defensive line in football, smallest offensive line in football. They're not going to be able to run the ball. And we're like, we'd run the ball against the Russian army. What do you mean we're not going to run the ball? We run the ball against everybody. And then one of the things pregame that happened, one of their rotational defensive linemen, it's San Diego. That's where we're playing. It's warm. It's sunny. Defensive lineman that's a rotational player, they decide not to dress him pregame. And we're sitting in the locker room going, he's an inactive? Like, that to me and that to us was the ultimate sign of disrespect. Like, you guys don't think that we can run it down your throats. And I go, oh, man, you got another thing coming. You have no idea who we are. You have completely overlooked us. Here's what I love about Philly, and you mentioned it. You mentioned Jalen Hurts, right? He plays horribly in that playoff game, right?
Yeah.
And they replace him with Tua. And Tua drives down in the opening of the second half, scores a touchdown. First guy down to celebrate with him, Jalen Hurts. Now, the average player, the average guy would be pouting on the bench because 25-2 as a starter, his job just got ripped away, and this freshman took his job. Jalen Hurts celebrated that touchdown as though he threw it. You show me anywhere else in life where somebody celebrates somebody else's success like it's their own.
Yeah.
And the Philadelphia Eagles have that. That's what they have about themselves, and that's why I absolutely love this team.
Yeah. No, it's the only Super Bowl I remember where I can see multiple scenarios on both sides. I can see Philadelphia grabbing a lead. The Chiefs become very pass dependent. Mm-hmm. Some of their perimeter weapons dinged up, and they're mostly B receivers anywhere. Great corners by Philadelphia, and they get a little one-dimensional. And Philadelphia just starts running, Mahomes on the sideline. I can see it.
Sure.
I can also see Kansas City winning the toss, taking a lead. Jalen Hurts he's not 100%. An early mistake. Trailing Kansas City is different than trailing everybody else in the sport. Nick Wright said it earlier. If the game's 24-10 late Eagles, I still give Philly a shot. If it's 24-10 late Kansas City, it feels more desperate. Would you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. And this is where, if you look at Kansas City, now, I'm going to give you a scenario. Kansas City probably still wins the majority of these games they were in. Right? The formula has been, if you can possess the ball, so you can get yourself 38 to 40 minutes of possession time. Give them 20 to 22 minutes of possession time, right? So you shrink the game. And what I mean by shrinking the game, an average game has about 12 offensive possessions. Can I get Kansas City down to 7 or 8 legit offensive possessions, right? And we produce, we run the ball, we control the tempo, we control the clock, we wear this defense out. And now all of a sudden, you're forced, like you were in Tampa, to throw the ball. What happened when they were forced to throw the ball? Because Tampa was playing off. They were playing a too high safety look. They were playing deep linebackers, and they were basically going, we'll give you 7 yards of carry. Go ahead and take it. And Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs said, no, that's not the way we win. We're going to throw the football. Well, guess what? You get into that scenario with those corners, what I think is one of the best nickel players in football in C.J. Gardner-Johnson. And then that pass rush and that rotation, then I think you're in trouble. So we'll see. I mean, that's the formula, and they have lost games that way. They still have won more than they've lost that way. I'll give them credit because they are awesome, and they only need 3 plays to score a touchdown. That's the way they operate.
Let's pivot. My last question. You're a wildly popular radio host in Denver. You've been doing it for years. You played there for the Broncos and have real insight, more than anybody, I think, at Fox on the Broncos and their day-to-day moves. You're very critical of them when you have to be. I like the Sean Payton move. I think there are obstacles, but he's an offensive coach as the league is leaned that way. I don't think Russell Wilson is washed, although it's certainly possible as a mobile quarterback who's smaller, taking hits, that maybe he's now B+, not A. Your view on – I just watched Brian Daboll get a project to the playoffs. I don't doubt they'll win. What's realistic improvement to you in this division with this team, this quarterback, and Sean Payton, this coach?
Well, Sean Payton as a coach, putting Russell in positions to do what Russell does well, as opposed to what he was in last year, operating in gun from the pocket and trying to read through multiple progressions. Like, doing what he does well, using the boot keep game, getting him outside the pocket, allowing him to do what he did in Seattle for all those years. You do that, you can have success. Here's something I've learned from Sean, talking to Sean a bunch, and I consulted for Sean on the Saints, and so in the run game and some other things. So one of the things that Sean taught me is, like, a lot of young coaches see a juicy matchup, Colin, and they're like, I can't get enough of that. Man, we got to go with that. Even if it exposes a weakness. It puts a running back on a linebacker they can't pick up in blitz. It puts a tight end on a defensive end that can't block that. But he goes, you know what, I love this matchup is so juicy. We just got to hold up. We got to hold up. And you know what happens? The third time you test that matchup, strip sack, fumble, touchdown the opposite way, you lose the game. So Sean Payton told me once, he goes, you have to be able to forego a juicy matchup regardless of how good it looks. Doesn't matter how good it looks if it exposes a weakness on your own team. The first thing in coaching, mitigate your own weaknesses, then attack the weaknesses of the opponent. And with Russell Wilson, his first task at hand is go, dude, I'm going to mitigate the things that you don't do well. You ain't going to do them. Yeah. And I don't care what your people say, ain't going to happen in my watch. We're going to lean on the stuff that you're good at, and we're going to build an offense around that. And that's what Sean is exceptional at.
Yeah, Russell's smart. He's a workaholic. He's still mobile. He's willing to learn. And my guess, I think J-Mac feels the same way. They feel like a double-digit win team as long as they stay healthy. Rebuild the O-line a little, although It's not terrible. It's just it needs work on the inside. So Mark Schlereth, 3-0 in Super Bowls. This will air the night before the Super Bowl. Do you remember anything specifically about how you slept, what went through your mind 24 hours out?
Slept like a baby because I was always prepared. I always did the work. I was never going to be the reason we lost a game. So preparation-wise was going to be solid. It was the day of the game, the waiting around, that killed me. I actually moved my furniture in my room. I moved my bed up against the wall. I moved my dressers out. And I went through every play, 19 handoff versus 3 technique versus 2 technique versus 2-eye technique versus 4 technique versus 5 technique. What footwork do I want to use? I went through, I swear, if people were underneath me, it sounded like a couple of rhinos wrestling under a blanket up top. I worked up a lather. I was sweating because you got so much time.
Right.
And so I just trying to go through everything because when I got on a football field, and I was this way my whole career, I never wanted to have to think. If you made a move, you think about it. Like, as an offensive lineman, they're shifting and they're moving around, and it's like, blue 80, ha-da! And right on the second, blue 80, somebody shifts. The entirety of the play changes.
Right.
Who I'm supposed to block, what my assignment is, what the guy next to me assignment is, how we working in combination, and all those things. So I never wanted to have to think. I wanted my body just to react naturally when those things happen. So that was just the way I prepared. So that's what I did, before the Super Bowl.
Give me a score, Super Bowl 57.
I'm going to go 27-17, the Philadelphia Eagles.
Patrick Mahomes shut down.
Yeah.
A man of courage and conviction. Great seeing you, man.
You too, buddy.
Great teammate at Fox. The Herd Super Bowl special marches on from Glendale.
It all kicks off Super Bowl Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern on Fox.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.